The Little Soldier. Once upon a time, there was a little soldier who had just come back from the war. He was a brave little fellow, but he had lost neither arms nor legs in battle. Still, the fighting was ended and the army disbanded, so he had to return to the village where he was born. Now, the soldier's name was really John, but for some reason or other, his friends always called him the Kinglet. Why? No one ever knew, but it was. As he had no father or mother to welcome him home, he didn't hurry himself, but went quietly along, his knapsack on his back and his sword by his side, when suddenly one evening he was seized by a wish to light his pipe. He felt for his matchbox to strike a light, but to his great disgust he found that he had lost it. He had only gone about a stone's throw after making the discovery when he noticed a light shining through the trees. When he went towards it and perceived before him an old castle with a door standing open. The little soldier entered the courtyard, and peeping through a window, saw a large fire blazing at the end of a low hall. He put his pipe in his pocket and knocked gently, politely, saying, "Would you give me a light?" But he got no answer. After waiting for a moment, John knocked again, this time a little more loudly, but still there was no reply. He raised the latch and entered. The hall was empty. The little soldier made straight for the fireplace, seized the tongs, and was stooping down low to look for a nice red-hot coal with which to light his pipe, when click! Something went. Like a spring giving way, and in the very midst of the flames, an enormous serpent reared itself up, close to his face. What was more strange still, the serpent had the head of a woman. Such an unexpected sight, many men would have turned away and run for their lives. But the little soldier, though he was kind of small, he had a true soldier's heart. He only made one step backwards, then grasped the hilt of a sword. "Don't unsheath it," said the serpent. "I've been waiting for you, as it is you who must deliver me." Who are you?" "My name is Ludovine, and I am the daughter of the king of the Low Countries. Deliver me, and I will marry you and make you happy forever." Now, some people might not have liked the notion of being made happy by a serpent with the head of a woman, but the kinglet had no such fears. Besides, he felt the fascination with Ludovin's eyes, which looked at him as a snake looks at a little bird. They were beautiful green eyes, not round like those like a cat, but long and almond-shaped, and they shone with a strange light, and the golden hair which floated around them seemed all the brighter for their luster. The face had the beauty of an angel, though the body was just that of a serpent. "What must I do?" asked the kinglet. "Open that door. You will find yourself in a gallery with a room just at the end like this. Cross that, and you will see a closet, out of which you must take a tunic, and bring it back to me." The little soldier boldly prepared to do as he was told. He crossed the gallery in safety, and when he reached the room, he saw by the light of the stars 8 hands on a level with his face, which threatened to strike him. And turn his eyes which way he would, he could discover no bodies belonging to them. He lowered his head and rushed forward amidst the storm of blows, which he returned with his fists. And when he got to the closet, he opened it, took down the tunic, and brought it back to the first room. "Here it is," he panted, rather out of breath. Click! Once more the flames parted. Ludovine was a woman, down to her waist. She took the tunic and put it on. It was a magnificent tunic of orange velvet, embroidered with pearls, but the pearls were not so white as her own neck. "That is not all," she said. "Go to the gallery, take the staircase which is on the left, and in the second room on the first story you will find another closet with my skirt. Bring this to me, please." The kinglet did as he was told, but in entering the room he saw, instead of merely hands, 8 arms, each holding an enormous stick. He instantly unsheathed his sword and cut his way through with such vigor that he hardly received a scratch. He brought back the skirt, which was made of silk, as blue as the skies of Spain. "Here it is," said John, and the serpent appeared. Now she was a woman, as far as her knees. "I only want my shoes and stockings now," said she. "Go and get them from the closet which is on the second story." The little soldier departed, and found himself in the presence of 8 goblins armed with hammers, and flames darting from their eyes. This time he stopped short at the threshold. "My sword is of no use," he thought to himself. "These wretches will break it like glass, and if I can't think of anything else, I'm a dead man." At this moment his eyes fell on the door, which was made of oak, thick and heavy. He wrenched it off its hinges and held it over his head, then went straight at the goblins, whom he crushed beneath it. After that he took the shoes and stockings out of the closet and brought them to Ludovine, who, directly as she had put them on, became a woman all over. When she was quite dressed in her white silk stockings and little blue slippers dotted all over with carbuncles, she said to the deliverer, "Now you must go away, and never come back here, whatever happens. Here's a purse with 200 ducats. Sleep tonight in the inn at the edge of the wood, and wake early in the morning. For at 9 o'clock I shall pass the door, and you shall take you up in my carriage." "Why shouldn't we go now?" asked the little soldier. "Because the time has not yet come," said the princess. "But first you may drink my health with this glass of wine." As she spoke, she filled a crystal goblet with a liquid that looked like melted gold. John drank, then lit his pipe, and went out. When he arrived at the inn, he ordered supper, but no sooner had he sat down to eat it than he felt that he was going sound asleep. I must be more tired than I thought," he said to himself, and after telling them to be sure to wake him next morning around 8 o'clock, he went to bed. All night long he slept like a dead man. Must be nice. At 8 o'clock they came to wake him, and at 1/2 past, and a quarter of an hour later, but it was of no use. At last they decided to leave him in peace. The clocks were striking 12 when John awoke. He sprang out of bed, and scarcely wanting to dress himself, hastened to ask if anyone had been to inquire for him. "Ah, yes. There was a lovely princess," replied the landlady, "in a couch of gold. She left you this bouquet and a message to say that she would pass this way tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock. The little soldier cursed his sleep and tried to console himself by looking at his bouquet, which was full of immortales. "It's the flower of remembrance," thought he, forgetting that it was also a flower of the dead. Dead remembrance, yeah. When the night came, he slept with one eye open, clutching his pillow tight, and jumped up 20 times an hour. When the birds began to sing, he could lie still no longer, and climbed out of his window onto the branches of one of the great lime trees that stood before the door. There he sat, dreamily gazing at his bouquet, till he ended by going fast asleep. Once asleep, nothing was able to wake him, neither the brightness of the sun, nor the songs of the birds, nor the noise of Ludovic's golden coach, nor the cries of the landlady who sought him in every place she could think of. "Wake up! Where's that silly boy? Wake up!" As the clock struck 12, he woke, and his heart sank as he came down from the tree and saw them laying the table for dinner. "Did the princess come?" he asked. "Yes, indeed she did. She left this flower-covered scarf for you and said she would pass by tomorrow at 7 o'clock. But it would be the last time." "I must have been bewitched," thought the little soldier. Then he took the scarf, which had a strange kind of scent, and he tied it around his left arm, thinking all the while that the best way to keep awake was to not go to bed at all. So he paid his bill and bought a horse with the money that remained, and when the evening came he mounted his horse and stood in front of the inn door, determined to stay there all night. Every now and then, when he stooped to smell the sweet perfume of the scarf around his arm, he smelt it so often that at last his head sank on the horse's neck. And he and his horse snored in company. It was a blue flower, though. When the princess arrived, they shook him, and beat him, and screamed at him, "Wake up!" But it was all no good. Neither man nor horse woke until the coach was seen vanishing away in the distance. Then John put spurs to his horse, calling with all his might, "Stop! Stop!" But the coach drove on as before, and though the little soldier rode after it for a day and a night, he never got one step nearer. Thus they left many villages, towns, hovels behind them, till they came to the sea itself. There John thought that at last the coach must stop. But, wonder of wonders, it went straight on, and rolled over the water as easily as it had done over the land. John's horse, which had carried him so well, sank down from fatigue, and the little soldier sat sadly on the shore, watching the coach, which was fast disappearing on the horizon. However, he soon plucked up his spirits again and walked along the beach to try to find a boat in which he could sail after the princess. But no boat was there, and at last, tired and hungry, he sat down to rest on the steps of a fisherman's hut. In the hut was a young girl who was mending a net. She invited John to come in and set before him some wine and fried fish, and John ate and drank and felt comforted. And he told his adventures to the little fisher girl. But though she was very pretty, with skin as white as a gull's breast, for which her neighbors gave her the name of the seagull, he did not think about her at all, for he was dreaming of the green eyes of the princess. When he had finished his tale, she was filled with pity and said, "Last week, when I was fishing, my net suddenly grew very heavy, and when I drew it in, I found a great copper vase fastened with lead. I brought it home and placed it on the fire. When the lead had melted a little, I opened the vase with my knife and drew out a mantle of red cloth and a purse containing 50 crowns. That was this mantle covering my bed, and I've kept the money for my marriage portion. But take it and go to the nearest seaport, where you'll find a ship sailing for the Low Countries, and when you become king, you'll bring me back my 50 crowns." And the kinglet answered, "When I am the king of the Low Countries, I will make you a lady-in-waiting to the queen, for you are as good as beautiful. So farewell," he said, and as the seagull went back to her fishing, he rolled himself in the mantle and threw himself down on the heap of dried grass, thinking of the strange things that had befallen him, till suddenly he exclaimed, "Oh, how I wish to be in the capital of the Low Countries!" In one moment, the little soldier found himself standing before a splendid palace. He rubbed his eyes and pinched himself, smacked himself a few times, and when he was quite sure he was not dreaming, he said to a man who was smoking his pipe before the door, "Excuse me, where am I?"
"Where are you? Can't you see? Before the king's palace, of course."
"What king?"
"Why, the king of the Low Countries," replied the man, laughing and supposing that he was mad.
Was there ever anything so strange? But as John was an honest fellow, and he was troubled at the thought that Seagull would think he had stolen her mantle and purse, he began to wonder how he could restore them to her at the soonest. When he remembered that the mantle had some hidden charm that enabled the bearer to transport himself from place to place, and in order to make sure of this, he wished himself in the best inn in the town. In an instant he was there. Enchanted with this discovery, he ordered supper, and as it was too late to visit that king that night, he went to bed. The next day, when he got up, he saw that all the houses were wreathed with flowers and covered with flags, and all the church bells were ringing. The little soldier inquired the meaning of all the noise, and was told that the Princess Ludovine, the king's beautiful daughter, had been found, and was about to make her triumphant entry. "Well, that will suit me just fine," thought the kinglet. "I will stand at the door and see if she knows me." He had scarcely time to dress himself when the golden coach of Ludovine went by. She had a crown of gold upon her head, and the king and queen sat by her side. By accident, her eyes fell upon the little soldier, and she grew pale and turned away her head. Didn't she know me? The little soldier asked himself. Or was she still angry that because I missed our meetings? He followed the crowd till he got to the palace. When the royal party entered, he told the guards that it was he who had delivered the princess, and wished to speak to the king. But the more he talked, the more they believed him mad, and refused to let him pass. This guy's a nut. The little soldier was furious. He felt that he needed his pipe to calm him, and he entered a tavern and ordered a pint of beer. "It's a miserable soldier's helmet," he said to himself. "If I only had enough money to making myself look splendid as the lords of the court. But what good is thinking of that when I have only the remains of the seagull's 50 crowns? He took out his purse to see what was left, and he found that there were still 50 crowns. The seagull must have miscounted, he thought, and he paid for his beer. Then he counted his money again. There were still 50 crowns. He took away 5, counted a third time. There were still 50. He emptied the purse altogether, then shut it. When he opened it, 50 crowns were still there. Then a plan came into his head, and he determined to go at once to the court tailor and coach builder. He ordered the tailor to make him a mantle and vest of blue velvet embroidered with pearls, and the coach builder to make him a golden coach like the coach of Princess Ludovine. If the tailor and the coach builder were quick, he promised to pay them double. A few days later, the little soldier was driven through the city in his coach, drawn by 6 white horses, with 4 lackeys, richly dressed, standing behind. Inside sat John, clad in blue velvet, with a bouquet of immortalis in his hand, and a scarf bound around his arm. He drove round the city, throwing money to the left and to the right, and the third time, as he passed under the palace windows, he saw Ludovine lift a corner of the curtain and peek out. The next day, no one talked of anything but the rich lord who had distributed money as he drove along. The talk even reached the court, and the queen, who was very curious, had a great desire to see this wonderful prince.
"Very well," said the king. "Let him be asked to come and play cards with me."
This time, the kinglet was not late for his appointment. The king sent for the cards, and they sat down to play. They had 6 games, and John always lost. The stake was 50 crowns, and each time he emptied his purse, which was full the next instant. The 6th time the king exclaimed,
"It is amazing!"
The queen cried, "It is astonishing!" The princess cried, "It's bewildering." "Not so bewildering," replied the little soldier, "as your charge into a serpent."
"Hush!"
interrupted the king, who did not like the subject. "I only spoke of it," said John, "because you see in me the man who delivered the princess from the goblins and whom she promised to marry."
"Is that true?" asked the king to the princess.
"Quite true," answered Ludovine. "But I told my deliverer to be ready to go with me when I passed by with my coach. I passed 3 times, but he slept so soundly that no one could wake him."
"What is your name, boy?" said the king. "And who are you?"
"My name is John. I am a soldier, and my father is a boatman."
"You are not a fit husband for my daughter. Still, if you will give us your purse, you shall have her for your wife."
"My purse does not belong to me, and I cannot give it away."
"But you can lend it to me till our wedding day," said the princess, with one of those glances the little soldier could never resist.
"And when will that be?"
"At Easter," said the monarch.
"Or in a blue moon," murmured the princess. But the kinglet did not let on that he heard her. and let her take the purse. Next evening he presented himself at the palace to play piquet with the king and to make his court with the princess. But he was told that the king had gone into the country to receive his rents. He returned the following day, but had the same answer. And when he asked to see the queen, she had a headache. When this happened 5 or 6 times, he began to understand they were making fun of him. That is not the way for a king to behave, thought John. Old scoundrel. And then he remembered his red cloak. "Ah, what an idiot I am," he said. "Of course I can get in whenever I like, with the help of this." That evening he was in front of the palace, wrapped in his red cloak. On the first-story window, one light was open, and when John saw in the curtains the shadow of the princess, "I wish myself in the room of Princess Ludovine," said he, and in a second he was there. The king's daughter was sitting before a table, counting the money that she emptied from the inexhaustible purse. 850, 900, 950, 1,000, finished John. "Good evening, everybody." The princess jumped and gave a little cry. "You there! What business do you have to do? Leave at once, or I shall call—" "I have come," said the kinglet, "to remind you of your promise. The day after tomorrow is Easter Day, and it is high time to think of our marriage." Ludovine burst into a fit of laughter. "Oh, our marriage! You have really been foolish enough to believe that the daughter of a king of the Low Countries would ever marry the son of a boatman?" "Then give me back the purse," said John. "Never," said the princess, and put it calmly in her pocket. "As you like," said the little soldier. "He laughs best who laughs the last." And he took the princess in his arms. "I wish that we were at the ends of the earth." And in 1 second he was there, still clasping the princess tightly in his arms. "Oof," said John, laying her gently at the foot of a tree. "I never took such a long journey before. What do you say, madam?" The princess understood that it was no time for jesting and did not answer. Besides, she was still feeling giddy from her rapid flight, and had not yet collected all of her senses. The king of the Low Countries, however, was not a very scrupulous person, and his daughter took after him. This was why she had been changed into a serpent. It had been prophesied that she would be delivered by a little soldier, and that she must marry him, unless he failed to appear at the meeting place 3 times running. The cunning princess then laid her plans accordingly. The wine that she had given John in the castle and the goblins, the bouquet of immortales, and the scarf all had the power of producing sleep like death. And, well, we know how they reacted on John. However, even in this critical moment, Ludovine did not lose her head. "I thought you were simply a street vagabond," said she, in her most coaxing voice, "and I find you are more powerful than any king. Here is your purse. You got my scarf and bouquet.
"Here they are," said the kinglet, delighted with this change of tone, and he drew them from his bosom. Ludovine fastened one to his buttonhole, and the other around his arm. "Now," she said, "you are my lord and master, and I will marry you at your good pleasure." "You are kinder than I thought," said John, "and you shall never be unhappy, for I love you." "Then, my little husband, tell me how you managed to carry me so quickly to the ends of the world." The little soldier scratched his head. "Does she really mean to marry me?" he thought to himself, "or is she only trying to deceive me again?" But Ludovine repeated, "Won't you tell me?" in such a tender voice that he did not know how to resist her. "After all," he said to himself, "what does it matter in telling her the secret, as long as I don't give her the cloak?" And he told her the virtue of the red mantle. "Oh dear, how tired I am," sighed Ludovine. "Don't you think we had better take a nap, and then we can talk over our plans?" She stretched herself on the grass, and the kinglet did the same. He laid his hand on his left arm, which the scarf was tied, and was soon fast asleep. Ludovine was watching him out of one eye, and no sooner did she hear him snore than she unfastened the mantle, drew it gently from under him, wrapped it around her, and took the purse from his pocket, and put it in hers, and said, "I wish I was back in my own room." In another moment, she was there. Who felt foolish but John when he awoke 24 hours later, and found himself without purse, without mantle, and without princess. He tore his hair and beat his breast and trampled the bouquet, and tore his scarf from the tartars to atoms. Besides this, he was very hungry, and he had nothing to eat. He thought of all the wonderful things his grandmother had told him when he was a child, but none of them helped him now. He was in despair when suddenly he looked up and saw that the tree under which he had been sleeping was a superb plum, covered with fruit as yellow as gold. "There goes for some plums," he said to himself. "All it's fair and more." He climbed the tree and began to eat steadily. But he had hardly swallowed 2 plums when, to his horror, he felt as if something was growing on his forehead. He put up his hand and found that he had 2 horns. He leapt down from the tree and rushed to the stream that flowed close by. Alas, there was no escape. 2 charming little horns, which should have not disgraced the head of a goat. Then his courage failed him. "As if it was not enough," said he, "that a woman should trick me, but the devil must mix himself up in it and lend me his horns. What a pretty figure I should cut if I got back to the world." But he was still hungry, and the mischief was done. He climbed boldly up another tree, plucked 2 plums of a lovely green color. No sooner had he swallowed 2 than the horns disappeared. The little soldier was enchanted, though greatly surprised, and came to the conclusion that it was no good to despair too quickly. When he had done eating, the idea suddenly occurred to him. "Perhaps," he thought, "these pretty little plums may help me to recover my purse, my cloak, and my heart from the hands of that wicked princess. She has the eyes of a deer already,
Let her have the horns of one. If I can manage to set her up with a pair, I will bet any money that I shall cease to want for her for my wife. A horned maiden is by no means lovely to look at. So she plaited a basket of long willows, placed it carefully at both sorts of plums, and bravely walked on for many days, having no food but the berries on the wayside, and was in great danger from wild beasts and savage men. But he feared nothing, except for that his plums should decay. But this never happened. At last he came to a civilized country, and with the sale of some jewels that he had found about him on the evening of his flight, he took passage on board of a vessel to the Low Countries. So at the end of the year and a day, he arrived at the capital of the kingdom. The next day he put on a false beard and the dress of a date merchant, and, taking a little table, placed himself before the door of the church. He spread carefully out the fine white clothes of his Maribel plums, which looked for all the world as if they had been freshly gathered. And when he saw the princess coming out of church, he began to call in a faint voice, "Fine plums! Lovely plums!" "How much are they?" said the princess. 50 crowns each." 50 crowns? What is there so very precious about them? Do they give one wit, or will they increase one's beauty?" "They could not increase what is perfect already, fair princess, but still they might add something." Rolling stones gather no moss, but they sometimes gain polish, and the months which John had spent in roaming about the world had not been wasted. Such a neatly turned compliment flattered the princess. "What will they add?" she smilingly answered. "You'll see, fair princess, when you taste them. It will be a surprise for you." Ludovind's curiosity was aroused. She drew out a purse and shook out as many little heaps of 50 crowns as there were plums in the basket. The little soldier was seized with a wild desire to snatch the purse from her and proclaim her a thief, but he managed to control himself. His plums all sold. He shut up shop, took off his disguise, and changed as in and kept quiet, waiting to see what would happen. No sooner had she reached her room than the princess exclaimed, "Now let us see what these fine plums will add to my beauty." And throwing off her hood, she picked up a couple and ate them. Oh, imagine with what surprise and horror she felt all of a sudden that something was growing out of her forehead. She flew to her mirror and uttered a piercing cry. "Horns! So was that what he promised me? Let someone find that plum seller at once and bring him to me. Let his nose and ears be cut off. Let him be flayed alive and burnt in a slow fire, and his ashes scattered to the winds. Oh, I shall die of shame and despair." Her women ran at the sound of her screams and tried to wrench off the horns. But it was of no use, and they only gave her a violent headache. The king sent round a herald to proclaim that he would give the hand of the princess to anyone who could rid her of her strange ornaments. So all the doctors and sorcerers and surgeons in the Low Countries and in the neighboring kingdoms thronged to the palace, each with a remedy of his own, but it was all no good. and the princess suffered so much from the remedies that the king was obliged to send out a second proclamation that anyone who undertook to cure the princess, and who failed to do it, should be hanged up to the nearest tree. But the prize was too great for any proclamation to put a stop to the efforts of the crowd of suitors, and that a year of orchards of the Low Countries all bore harvests of dead men. The king had given orders that they should seek high and low for the plum seller, but in spite of all their pains, he was nowhere to be found. When the little soldier discovered that their patience was worn out, he pressed the juice of the green queen glad plums into a small vial, bought the doctor's robe, put on a wig and spectacles, and presented himself before the king of the Low Countries. He gave himself out the famous physician who had come from distant lands, and he promised that he would cure the princess if only he might be left alone with her. Another madman determined to be hanged, said the king. Very well, do as he asks. One should refuse nothing to a man with a rope around his neck. As soon as the little soldier was in the presence of the princess, he poured some drops of the liquid into a glass. The princess had scarcely tasted it when the tips of the horns disappeared. They would have disappeared completely, said the pretend doctor, if there did not exist something to counteract the effect. It is possible to cure people whose souls are as clean as the palm of my hand. Are you sure you haven't committed some little sin? Examine yourself well. Ludovine had no need to think it over long, but she tore the pieces between the shame and a humiliating confession, and the desire to be unhorned. At last she made answer with downcast eyes. I've stolen a leather purse from a little soldier. Give it to me. The remedy will not act until I hold the purse in my hands. It cost Ludovine a great pang to give up the purse, but she remembered that riches would not benefit her as long as she still had to keep the horns. With a sigh, she handed the purse to the doctor, who poured more than liquid in the glass, and when the princess had drunk it, she found that the horns had diminished by 1/2. You must really have another little sin on your conscience. Did you steal nothing from the soldier but this purse? I also kind of stole his cloak. Give it to me. Here it is. This time Ludovine thought herself that once the horns had departed, she could call her attendants and take the things from the doctor by force. She was greatly pleased with this idea, when suddenly the pretended physician wrapped himself in the cloak, flung away the wooden spectacles, and showed to the traitress the face of the little soldier. She stood before him, dumb with fright. I might, said John, have left you horned to the end of your days, but I am a good fellow, and I once loved you, and besides, you're too like the devil to have any need of his horns. John had wished himself in the house of the seagull. Now the seagull was seated at the window, mending her net, and from time to time her eyes wandered to the sea, as if she was expecting someone. At the noise made by the little soldier, she looked up and blushed. So it is you, she said. How did you get here? And then she added in a low voice, And have you married your princess? Then John told her all his adventures, and when he had finished, he restored to her the purse and the mantle. What can I do with them? She said. You have proved to me that happiness does not lie in the possessions of treasures. It lies in work and in the love of an honest woman, replied the little soldier, who noticed for the first time what beautiful eyes she had. Dear Seagull, will you have me for a husband? And he held out his hand. Yes, I will, answered the fisher maiden, blushing very red. But only on the condition that we seal up the purse and the mantle and the copper vessel and throw them into the sea. And this they did.